My name is Adam Handler. I'm an artist based in New York. I was born in Queens, a borough of New York City, and I grew up on Long Island in a regular suburban household. As a child, my grandparents had a picture framing factory in Brooklyn, and this is really where I started to experience and started to live and be comfortable around artworks. And I spent much of my youth, and then during my years in college, I worked there, learning every aspect of picture framing, display, stretching paintings, which really helped me as an artist, not only from learning the history of art, but the technical sides of art. I had, I would say, a typical New York childhood. It was surrounded by, playing with my friends at the parks, bike riding, and I think also growing up, I was born in 1986, so my childhood was mainly the 1990s. And at that time, all the things that were popular, such as like Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, Nintendo, I think all those popular culture items seeped into my work or influenced my work, but on a very subconscious level. It influenced me in a way that I didn't know was influencing me, which is somehow, I think, perhaps the most authentic way of inspiration, because it's something that happened very organically without intention. So the ghost character, which has become one of my, I would say one of my most popular characters in my work, it's been about 12 years I've been producing this image, and the image has evolved. A lot of times the evolution happens in the background colors, in some of the new monochromatic pieces. I keep working with this character. And the ghost character for me was a way to create a friendly relationship with death. I find that death is something that no matter where you live, no matter what part of the world or socioeconomic status, culture, race, death is something that we all have to experience, and that's something that was extremely fascinating for me. Mid-20s, I started to experience a lot of anxiety, which I never experienced before. And my grandparents, which were very central figures in my life, and probably one of the main reasons I ended up being an artist, they were getting older, had a sickness, and at that time, I could very clearly remember this new feeling of being scared, of having this fear around death and losing the ones that were the most important to me. So I always used art as a way to work through these work through these life anxieties. And the ghost character was born from that anxiety. And from there, I used it almost as a therapeutic tool. It was a way for me to confront death in a very positive or familiar way. And I continue to use it as a tool. And it's interesting, thinking back, how that image has evolved for me personally. It used to be an image to work through my grandparents getting older, or anxieties about death and things like this. But now, as being 37 and having children, the image now means more to not take anything for granted, to live life to the fullest and everything it has to experience, as we don't know how much time we have or when that time will end. So it's quite fascinating for me how this has evolved, how that same image means something different for me now than it meant for me, let's say, 10 years ago. I think it influenced me extremely, as that it allowed me to feel very comfortable with painting and looking at painting. I think people could get intimidated sometimes by entering a gallery scene and thinking that they have to understand a piece or have an intellectual conversation about the artworks. But for me, my works aren't meant to be intellectual, they're meant to be emotional. And I really, at the core, I want people to feel. That's what my goal is as the painter and what I want to communicate with the audience. I want them to feel something, if it's happiness, sadness, grief, joy. That's for me the most important. I think for me, if I ended up being a writer or a poet, even the poetry that I did write, in my earlier 20s, it was mostly observation about like the human condition. It was an observation on relationships, primarily relationships and those interactions, those small interactions. I always am more fascinated by the tiny moments in life, not the big, huge moments or some kind of, philosophical view on life. I like the small, very personal moments that nobody sees, that are in private. One of the things that I want to continue to do is continue my work to evolve, to continue to push the limits on what's possible within painting. But another thing that I really am fascinated by is public displays of art, public sculpture, murals. To me, this is one of the highest forms of art, as it is, art at its core is a form of communication, a way to communicate with the public or communicate with people that you normally wouldn't have the opportunity to communicate with. So a public artworks, to me, is a way to communicate with a broad sense of people, not just people that would be coming to a gallery show or a museum show or collectors. It's a way to interact for those tiny moments, I said, where a child is walking to school and looks up at a sculpture, or a businessman is having a lunch break and stops and has a moment with one of my pieces.